Hello, everyone. This is StrawberryShorty here with season 2 of the Santa Clauses. And I can't believe none of you guys told me this was out. If you've been following my channel, my situation actually has gotten worse since I recorded the first season. On top of still being homeless, I no longer have the luxury of downloading and piecing together videos, so whatever video you get for this might not be too impressive. You'll also probably see a recording watermark, since I'll almost certainly be starting and stopping my recording software repeatedly to try and record over suitable footage. Anyway, I'm curious to see where this season is going to go, so without further ado, let's jump right in. We kick things off with a reminder of what happened last season, accompanied by a really annoying Jingle Bell sound effect, and ending with a line about how Christmas was previously threatened by some mad Santa. Is that what this season is going to be about? Sorry for that long pause. It would not stop recording, but yeah. So, the episode proper kicks off with a flashback to 1307 AD, where one angry Santa is being led through some tunnels by a girl in a really strange mask that I think is supposed to be her face. Her name is apparently Olga, and sure enough, the guy with her is the Mad Santa, though he's not too thrilled about that name. He's actually called Magnus Antis, and I'd like to take a moment to point out that Antis is actually not Santa spelled backwards, which I totally thought it was. And some oddly unfitting modern music plays in the background, and we learn that this guy is apparently being forcibly overthrown, something that has never happened to a Santa before. Magnus says he hopes the name Mad Santa strikes fear into people for hundreds of years, before we shift to the present day. In Chicago, Illinois, and totally not the workshop like I first thought, 716 years later, it's the Christmas season, and we see a woman hurrying along Chris, spelled with a K according to the subtitles I had, who is apparently one of those fake Santas. Unnamed woman and fluffy Santa walk through a decorated neighborhood, commenting on the kids eating snow and candy canes that are apparently extremely toxic and almost certainly a health code violation. And unfortunately, not a lot of people are lining up to sit in Fluffy's sleigh either. After this, we cut to a scene of the real Santa flying his sleigh, talking about how much he loves what he does. He's accompanied by his family, and I'm not entirely sure if this is picking up exactly where the previous one left off. Santa decides to endanger said family by driving the sleigh like it's a freaking roller coaster, encouraged by his daughter, whose name I have completely forgotten. It will hopefully come back to me. The title screen shows us a new clause, the Cribble clause, which sounds way less clear than the previous ones. If anyone has any guesses as to what this clause is about, put them in the comments now. All I can think of from that name is cereal, but I'm guessing it'll probably connect to the Mad Santa in some way. So, Santa visits Fluffy Claus's house, where the man is fast asleep. He's pleased with the decorations and snacks, rum cake and bourbon balls, and manages to leave before he can be discovered. Fluffy opens his present and discovers it is a glowing snow globe, if you will. Anyway, back at the North Pole, Betty toasts the increasing Christmas spirit with Scott and Carol, revealing everyone has gotten the magical globes. Can't wait to see how that backfires. These apparently just show everyone their happiest Christmas memories, which we can only hope everyone has. It's a nice sentiment, but am I awful for hoping he left some other stuff too? People are going to want some fun things, and what if your happiest Christmas memory just ends up making you sad in some way? That could actually end up being the worst gift for someone who's coping with, loss. Now that I've gotten everyone all depressed, Santa wants to improve their elf security force, while Betty points out that Gary is incompetent. Is Gary the snake eye patch one from the last season? This is confirmed a second later when he shows up, and it's revealed he's apparently not well liked. That's a little sad. What has he done to deserve this? He's not supposed to be sitting in on their private meeting, but naturally he doesn't care. Carol asks to take care of Gary, which totally doesn't mean killing him. She wants to take over the ELFS, which could lead to some cool scenes, I guess. She wants to be a protector, feeling that that's a job for Mrs. Claus. Santa, due to his experiences in the Yuleverse, meanwhile, has realized he's just a link in an infinite chain, and he needs to come up with the next link. Betty thinks he's talking about her as the obvious contender, revealing she's ineligible. Why is that? I'd kind of like to get some details. But he's actually talking about buddy claws, which Betty is against. She insults like his physical strength, which really shouldn't matter because magic does all that for you, and his intelligence, mentioning how he still uses the bunny rhyme to tie his shoes. He reveals that he just likes it, as he and Sandra, which that's her name, also overheard. Did they not bother to look around the room before having this meeting? Anyway, Buddy is thrilled with the idea of taking over as Santa, not that he was ever actually asked. He can't wait to tell Riley, but Santa urges him to maybe forget about her. Carol interrupts, suggesting they tell their daughter about her new job. Sandra, also without being asked, is told she'll be in charge of the reindeer. She's also thrilled, thankfully, though a little less so when her father mentions she'll be in charge of all the animals at the North Pole. And then Crazy Elf Girl brings in a birthday cake. Is it supposed to be Santa's birthday? No, it is apparently Buddy's. He makes a wish, and something tells me we're going to have serious consequences. And I turn out to be right because he wished Riley to the North Pole. Seriously, is no one going to ask people about their thoughts on things in this show before they do them? Like, she could have been in the middle of changing, for crying out loud. Think things through, people. Santa is less than thrilled, especially since Riley's lack of surprise means that Buddy didn't dust her after revealing he was the son of Santa in the first season. Carol is extremely unbothered. Santa wants Buddy to be focused, while Carol actually thinks that, being only 18, he's not cut out for the job of Santa. I'm voting for Fluffy if we're looking for a new Santa again. Carol doesn't think Betty will go for this idea, and she's right, even though the girl made her feelings about this pretty clear earlier. Over dinner with Noel, Betty again stresses how terrible a Santa Buddy would be. Dinner also turns out to be popcorn and cranberries. That sounds unhealthy. Noel discovers a bunch of letters that Betty chose to hide in the oven instead of just, destroying them. And we finally get a rough idea what the Cribble Crabble clause is. Basically, it involves an elf spending 1 year in the real world. Noel is happy for her, but Betty doesn't want to go. She apparently won't have a choice, however, as that elf from last season, I had to look up his name, it's apparently Crouton, shows up at her door to make her go. We then get the finer details of the clause. When you accept the position of head elf, you also agree to take a year off for education and rejuvenation purposes. Betty insists she can't go, but it's made clear she has no choice. There's even a specific part of the clause that mentions her by name. There's apparently some penalty for not going, so she reluctantly agrees. She also tries and utterly fails to make a run for it first, however. Cut to Sandra trying to talk to the reindeer about their eating habits. Riley, who seems way more annoying than I remember her, is super excited that she's dating the future Santa and visiting the North Pole. Buddy lets it slip that Sandra has been put in charge of the reindeer, who insists that no one tells them what to do. Except that seems like something Santa does, and I bet various elves have had that job before. Anyway, the reindeer are arguing and want her to take care of it since she claims to be in charge. Sandra, meanwhile, confides to Buddy and Riley that her powers have gotten stronger, to the point where she can hear all the reindeer and their fleas. The fleas are also apparently unionizing and demanding rights, so hashtag fleas have feelings too in the comments, please. This is really bothering her, it turns out. We cut to Fluffy Claus calling his dad about the snow globes, wanting to know what memory it showed him. But it seems like his father didn't get one. To his credit, he doesn't seem sad like you'd expect, and just theorizes that the non-believers didn't get one. He thinks this will make not believing in Santa pretty hard, though, which he hopes will be good for Santopolis, the Santa museum he's revealed to work at. Back at the North Pole, Buddy and Riley are talking about the snow globes, which apparently only work for about a week. If that ain't just like a Christmas toy. Anyway, Riley is very turned on by this talk of cherishing memories, while Santa is very eager to see her tour end. Buddy tries to talk him out of dusting Riley. This just made me think of dusting vampires on Buffy. Buddy wants to get rid of that whole dusting thing and wants to have Santa ride a train instead of a sleigh, maybe get him a new hat. Meanwhile, Sandra is overwhelmed by her heightened powers, and Carol comes to see what all the commotion is. Buddy and Riley turn out to have a very similar intelligence level, but that's enough to convince Santa to drop the whole dusting idea. He does insist Riley go home, however. We then have a very weird scene. The crazy elf is watching the other elves, including a girl I think might be that really young looking elf from the last season, do a really random musical number when a gift suddenly arrives. They assume that it's for them, and it turns out to be thieves out to steal the North Pole. None of the reactions to this feel genuine, so I'm expecting this will turn out to be some kind of ELFS test. Sure enough, another box is discovered, this one containing Gary, aka Gareth, and some of his allies, who take down the bad guys. The whole thing feels like a bad commercial, and it does turn out to be a recruitment video that Carol is watching, so that checks out. Gary arrives and Carol wants to talk to him. We don't see that conversation, however, as we cut to Santa talking to his barber about the various issues with his family. Betty arrives, revealing her upcoming departure, and Santa is just absolutely devastated. Because now he won't be able to try and convince her to sign off on Buddy as the next Santa. Even though 5 seconds ago he was complaining about Buddy. He also suggests Noel as Betty's replacement because, why not ruin Christmas? Noel talks to Betty before her departure, and they're pretty cute together. At least Noel is aware he's not cut out for her job, but she supports him anyway. Everyone gathers to see Betty off, and they seem pretty excited. I'm going to feel kind of bad if it turns out that they're all just as happy as Santa to see her go. The crazy elf begs her quietly not to leave them with Noel in charge, and she secretly clarifies that she, the crazy elf, will actually be the one in charge, as if that's much better. Before leaving, she tells Santa no big changes, which we all know is not going to happen. And sure enough, in the very next second, he immediately announces Buddy as the next Santa, alarming everyone. Noel panics, clearly against Buddy being the new Santa, while the crazy elf thinks the decision is similar to one that Magnus Antis would make. Santa overhears and asks for more info about this person, and learns about how Christmas was originally based in Europe, but was moved to the North Pole after humans started stealing the magic. Santa's confused as he didn't meet this Santa in the Yuleverse. And after his departure, Crazy Elf becomes desperate to hide the truth about Magnus Antis, as this would apparently make it so that Santa would never be able to trust another elf. Noel even burns some records in response. We get another flashback to the Mad Santa, who asks a bunch of short-hooded figures that totally aren't elves what he's ever done to them. He brings up torture, bedlam, and a threat to turn the world's children into nutcrackers, things he dismisses as just him being a little moody. They remain silent, and he brings up how they once called him the best Santa ever. He seems to accept his fate in the end, and is honestly talking like someone out of Game of Thrones. Not that I watched that show, that's just how I imagine them to talk. They zap him with some stick thing, turning him into a little nutcracker. And, okay, bets I don't know who's going to end up bringing him back. My money is on Buddy. Back in the present, Noel opens a safe to find the nutcracker is gone. Asking what he's talking about, Carol arrives with Metal Gear Gary. Noel dodges the importance of the thing he's looking for, while Carol is excited about their first case. Once she's gone, Noel shares his real concern with Gary, who thinks he's worried over nothing, as it'll only be a problem if the Nutcracker comes into contact with North Pole magic, and what are the odds that'll happen in the North Pole where basically everyone and everything is magic? Cut to the Nutcracker being, which is way bigger than it looked in the flashback, being messed around with by what turns out to be Fluffy Santa's dad. How did it even get to Earth? Oh, and as Fluffy scolds him for messing with it, he's shown to be holding that darn snow globe from Santa. I knew those would be trouble. I said it at the beginning of the episode. Anyway, Pops wants to close down the museum, which he apparently funded, and walks away from his son after not seeing anything in the ball while holding it. As Fluffy hurries after him, both the ball and the Nutcracker fall, with the magic from the latter hitting the former. And just like that, The Mad Santa is revived. And Fluffy returns and is rightfully alarmed, as is the Mad Santa, but somehow this is not the end of the episode, even though it feels like it totally should be. At the North Pole, Carol joins Scott to watch some fireworks. He wants to know why the kids aren't there. Sandra wants to be alone, while Buddy is depressed Riley left. Scott again states his concerns about them, but eventually admits that he doesn't want to lose his son. Meanwhile, Sandra is shown to be tormented by the various voices that she can now hear, pretty much just constantly, while Buddy shows up and confesses that he really just wants to have a normal relationship with Riley. In frustration over the nagging voices, Riley ends up letting out this weird blast of magic. And back at Santopolis, Fluffy thinks that Mad Santa is the real Santa. He tries to thank him for the magic snow globes, only for Mad Santa to reveal he would never give humans magic. This causes Fluffy to suspect he's not the real one, but Mad Santa angrily insists he is, and whoever is currently at the North Pole is a fake. And that is the end of the episode. It's not a bad start, but full of way darker implications than you'd expect when you look below the surface. I'm feeling especially bad for Sandra right now, with just the constant barrage of voices she has to endure. I'm curious to see where this season goes, and kind of wondering if we'll end up getting a third one. So, what did you think of this episode? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!